and welcome back to Purple Color Life. I just did a little experiment and I found a way to make my Toro TimeCutter cut 14% faster. That's right, I did the math, 14% faster. Stay tuned to the end of the video and I'll explain to you how I did it. We actually mowed this piece back in September of 2020 when the Toro TimeCutter was pretty new to us. So my video today is going to be seeing if I can mow that faster now than I did then. The other thing I want to see is if I use the same amount of fuel now as I did then. Now the machine's 3 years older, actually 4 summers older, and it's got a little bit more wear and tear on it, and I'm wondering how fuel consumption has changed after 4 summers of use. Now this field used to be a hay field. We would get hay from the field to feed our horses back when I was younger and my parents had 4 horses. But now it's just a huge front yard, about 5 acres of grass that Dad mows once a week, sometimes twice a week, depending on how fast it grows. And it is a really beautiful piece of land. We are really blessed to have the acreage and the land around us that we have here in Northwest Pennsylvania. So Mom and Dad are actually away. They're coming home tomorrow, so by the time you see this video, they will be home. So my parents have been away for about 2 weeks now. I have 2 younger sisters, one in Mississippi, one in Texas, and my parents love to go down and visit them and their families. So they've been away, and while they were away, I thought, hey, this is a great time to let that field grow up for 2 weeks. We'll set the Toro TimeCutter at 3.5 inches. We'll set the speed to rabbit, to the fastest speed, and I will mow that field the exact same as I did in September of 2020 and see what my speed is compared to then, what my fuel use is compared to then, and just my overall impressions of this machine and mowing that field after 4 summers now of using the Toro TimeCutter. You guys have seen me towing that Toro TimeCutter inside our enclosed trailer in the past. What you don't normally see though is me towing this with the Ford Ranger. Did a video a couple weeks ago about my daily commute in the Ford Ranger, kind of considering upgrading to another vehicle. Well, just like most of you commented below, this thing's a keeper. So I had it listed on Facebook Marketplace. It took me about 5 seconds to realize that it was more valuable to me than to anybody else. In fact, I had some pretty hurtful laugh emojis when I posted the price that I had on this. Now, I know what it's worth because it's really well taken care of. These are impossible to find anymore. It's the 4-cylinder, the 5-speed manual transmission, so I don't think I have to sell you guys on it. This is worth every penny of what I was asking. But as soon as I got a couple of those laugh face emojis, I was like, I'm not selling this thing. So I immediately removed it from Facebook Marketplace. Also after reading most of your comments on that previous video, and I decided, you know what? I love this little truck. It does everything I need it to do. Of course, it would be nice to have some of those safety features like lane departure and cruise control, but at the same time, it's so nice. It's costing me nothing. Totally reliable, just oil changes, brakes once in a while, tires because I put so many miles on it. It's a nice looking truck, even though Jennifer and Mackenzie say it's a grandpa truck. It's just super convenient to have the bed behind me, to have a cap. I can toss whatever in there, haul it wherever I'm going, and it's just probably, again, like I said a long time ago, one of the best daily drivers you could ever have. So it's hooked up to the trailer today, and that is what I brought the TimeCutter down here to mow with. I actually did a whole video about towing with this 4-cylinder 5-speed truck, and that video I'll put a link to up above. So like I said earlier, this field used to be a hay field, and as you know, if you've ever cut a hay field, they are not the most smooth surface. Now thankfully, for quite a few years now, Dad has been mowing this with both the Ford 8N tractor with the finish mower behind it, 3-point finish mower, and his John Deere 750 tractor with a 60-inch belly mower on it. So all those years of mowing with those 2 tractors have actually smoothed out the rough spots pretty good. There are still a couple groundhog holes because they love to live in that front field. And there's a couple areas where water has washed down underneath to where there is actually some old clay drain tiles. So there are some areas you have to be careful of while you're mowing. But mostly, it's a pretty flat, pretty smooth surface. Now it's not smooth like a regular front yard smooth. It's a little bit rough. It's one of those times where I do wish that Toro had the My Ride system. A little bit of suspension underneath me would be nice when mowing across this field. Now remember, the Toro TimeCutter is set up to mow at 7 miles an hour at its maximum speed. Well, I can tell you, I used every bit of that 7 miles an hour back and forth across that field. Now, I won't keep you here in suspense too long. Originally, when I mowed this in September of 2020, I had only had this Toro TimeCutter for a couple of months, and it took me about 1 hour and 45 minutes, so approaching 2 hours, but not quite. This time, I mowed it the exact same way, except a couple slight differences. The last time I mowed it, I went around the entire field probably 5 times, and then started mowing up and back, and then went around any obstacles. This time, I think I mowed a little bit smarter. I mowed around all the obstacles first, especially the ones at the edges. So along the fence line, down in the front grove. So those are the areas that take the longest, but again, much faster than if you were using something other than a zero-turn mower. That's one of the advantages of a zero-turn, is the ability to mow around obstacles. So I did all that hard stuff first, and then the rest of the time I was able to mostly just go up and back at 7 miles an hour, the longest stretches I could have. Now there are a couple utility poles in the middle that I would mow around those as I got to them, utility poles and suspension cables. But overall, I feel like I went way faster. So I kept track on my watch the entire time I was mowing. I did waste a little bit of time, not waste, but use a little bit of time moving cameras to get different camera shots. Jennifer was here with the drones. We wanted to get some drone footage, so I took off with the drone for her to fly. So those kind of things when you're filming take up a little bit of extra time, but my total time mowing this year was 1 hour, 31 minutes, and 2 seconds. So we shaved 15 minutes of mowing time off, and I know what you're thinking, cold air intake. No, it wasn't that. You're probably thinking, I adjusted the hydrostatic or the hydraulic motors. Nope, I didn't touch those. So you're probably wondering, what did I do? Did I tune this engine up? Better spark plugs, different coils, more fuel? Nope, here's what I did. So if I didn't tweak anything on the engine or the hydraulics of this machine, how did I cut 14% out of my mowing time? Well, the secret is right here in the seat. I have over 100 hours of additional seat time now that I didn't have the last time I mowed this field. Now I think that's key, because the more seat time you have on something, the more efficient you get, the more comfortable you get. So definitely everything I mow now, I mow faster than when I originally got this machine. In fact, most of the time when I'm mowing, even at home, my speed is down here on the fast rabbit mode. I will say that when I mow at the cemetery, I leave it in the tow mode, because at the cemetery we have a pretty steep incline. I mentioned that in our video called 5 Tips to Starting a Small Lawn Care Business. I'll put a link to that video up above if you're interested in watching it. But in addition to the slope, there's also tombstones, gravestones everywhere, and you want to be really cautious when you're mowing a cemetery. You don't want to hit those stones with the edge of your deck. You don't want to back into them when you're turning. You don't want your tail swing to catch one. You don't want your front dolly wheels to hit something. So always when you're mowing a cemetery or anyone else's property, you want to use more caution. A, it's better for your equipment to protect it, but B, it's somebody else's property, and you want to be cognizant of the fact that you don't want to damage somebody else's stuff. So I mowed that entire field just about the same way I did in 2020, with a couple exceptions. When I first mowed it in 2020, it was my first time mowing with the zero-turn mower, and I think I did a lot of around obstacles as I got to them. This time, I did a little bit different. I did around all the obstacles first, get that hard part of the mowing done, and then up and down was much easier at 7 miles an hour on this machine. So yes, I did cut 15 minutes of mowing time out. That's 14% compared to the last time I mowed. And another thing, fuel consumption. The last time I mowed with the Toro TimeCutter, this 5-acre field, I used 1 1/3 tanks of fuel. This Toro TimeCutter has a 3-gallon gas tank. I filled this thing all the way up to the brim before mowing this time, and now a little deceptive here because I'm leaning forward and towards the tank. We're showing half a tank. We're actually at between empty and 1/3 of a tank. So somewhere in that empty to 1/3, maybe quarter mark. But I think that's also impressive, and also a result of more efficiency by the driver or the operator of the zero-turn mower. Not only was I able to mow faster, but I was able to use less fuel. I think because probably I was going the maximum speed without adjusting speed and navigating around more things than I needed to. And I think the more efficient you are at mowing, the less fuel you actually use. Now, I mentioned in that video in September of 2020 that I thought this thing uses a lot of gas. And I would say that's probably because I was coming from previously mowing on a diesel tractor. And if you've mowed on a diesel tractor, you know they seem like they mow quite a few hours on a tank of diesel fuel. Now, I think it's a little bit deceptive because they have larger fuel tanks and you're not refilling that diesel as often. but when you are refilling it, you're putting a lot more than 3 gallons in at a time. So slightly deceptive there. I do think that as far as fuel consumption, a zero-turn mower uses more than a regular tractor, but at the same time, if I had mowed that 5-acre field on a lawn tractor, it would have taken me hours. Now I would have a hard time estimating. I always feel like this cuts my mowing time in half. So let's say this took me an hour and a half. You would think it would take 3 hours on a riding lawnmower. I bet it would take even longer than that. I bet it would take somewhere around 3.5, maybe 4 hours to mow 5 acres on a riding lawnmower with a 48-inch deck. Remember, this has a 60-inch forged iron deck. So I am feeling pretty good about myself that my experience driving has led me to use less fuel and less time when mowing. The Toro TimeCutter already cut down my mowing time significantly when I first got it, and now my driving experience and seat time has cut down even more mowing time. Thanks for watching. If you found this video informative and entertaining, please give us a thumbs up down below. If you're interested in more Toro TimeCutter videos, we have a whole playlist. I'll put a link to that up above and down below in the description. And then always look forward to reading your comments about either the project of the day, which was mowing that 5-acre field in an hour and a half, or the Ford Ranger, which I decided to keep because why not? It's the perfect vehicle. Thanks for watching. We'll see you again the next time.